Hello and welcome to the test drive demonstration of allowing external users to manage IIS 7 web applications. Web servers are one of the services that are most often in need of remote administration by an external consultant. And one of the challenges that many companies face when it comes to developing and managing websites is the administration of these web servers. In lots of cases, companies may outsource the development of the web application or the actual sites themselves. And this outsourcing requires that external users have access to internal web services. This access is often complex, involving VPN or terminal server access, and requiring that these individuals be given administrative rights on our web services. IIS 7 introduces a new management framework that makes it easy to not only give these users access to IIS, but restrict them to only specific sites and features. We'll begin this demo by exploring a technology called the feature delegation. Feature delegation allows me to define which settings in IIS are allowed to be administered and which are not. And any feature can be delegated in several ways, everything from full read and write to not visible. We access feature delegation through the IIS Server Manager and clicking on our server node. You can see that I have a fairly functional screen here that I can do IIS Server Management, and I can see my feature delegation tool here. By double clicking on that, we can see that we have set a number of these permissions already up. We have set the default document and directory browsing settings to read only, and we've also set the machine key setting to not delegate. We'll see the effects of this later in the demo, but what we've just done is limited the ability of certain items to be configured at the site level. Associated with this, the management service is what enables users on a remote computer to connect to IIS and manage it. When a user connects, they have to provide credentials and a site name. The management service is also available through our IIS admin console. And you can see here that we have a number of different credentials supported. IIS management credentials are sort of new to IIS 7 and very similar to the idea of a local account. Basically, we're saying this account is only valid in IIS 7. Perhaps one of the best examples of the use for this is if you want to grant an external consultant access to configure your web server, but you do not want to create a domain account for them. And this lets you create an account that is valid for the task you want them only to perform. To enable this, we're going to turn on Enable Remote Connections, and you can see I can utilize both Windows credentials and also IIS management credentials. As the user I want to create, I don't want to create a domain account for. I want to be able to utilize both for internal management and also external management. I've also got the ability to do further configuration of this tool. For example, port access, IP access, and so forth. Next, we'll look at creating a new account named Consultant and assigning it some permissions. To manage new users, we only really need to open the IIS Manage Users node, and from there we can create, delegate, and manage these accounts. The IIS Manage Users account is also available in our management tool, and you can already see that we've created an account called Consultant to save a little bit of time, and I can from here change their passwords, disable. I can also add a new user as simple as putting in the username and a password associated with this. Once the accounts are created, we need to assign permissions, and when you assign permissions, what you're doing is giving that account administrative permissions to all the writable delegated features in a website. We're going to go ahead and grant permissions to two of our users, the external consultant through the IIS Managed User account, as well as the website's internal owner, a gentleman called Don Hall. To do this, I'm going to go to my sites. I'm going to click on my default website, and then through this tool, I'm going to open up my IIS Manager permissions. I'm now going to add a user. I can actually add a user from my Windows account, and we can call this. We can actually do a search for this through Active Directory if we want, and add that user. I'm also going to allow my user of consultant. We've now got a framework in place that allows my external consultant to connect to my web server from a remote computer and manage it, all without having to grant that consultant a domain account. If that consultant has IIS Manager and is able to connect to this web server using the management port, all they have to do is add the website and configure it. The management port can also be published via an IIS server, so that even with IIS Manager outside the firewall, you can connect and manage this server. To see an example of this, all we have to do is go into my IIS Services Manager, click on the file, I'm connecting to a site, I'll choose the generic local host. In here I'd actually put a server name or a www name. I'm going to choose the default website, and then here I'm actually going to be connecting via my external credentials, which in this case for the IIS Managed Consultant. Put a password in, and I have now created that new connection. I can then create a connection site. I'm going to call this default website consultant, so I can actually identify it easy, click on the finish button, and now I can access that information quite easily. Once we're connected as a consultant, you'll notice two things. First of all, both the default document and the directory browser settings are read-only. And this is what we actually set, that information we set earlier on within the piece as well. You also notice that there is actually no machine key, and we disabled that earlier within the demonstration as well. So you can see we can actually create some very tight security for our external users. Basically, this is the effective delegation. If we do want to make a change to a setting, we actually have read-write access to things such as the database connection strings, and we can actually make that change through there. But again, it's quite easy for me to actually go in and configure that information. But what happens if I'm outside the firewall and we're running on an operating system that does not have IIS Manager installed on it, or our version of IIS Manager doesn't support remote connections like is found on Windows Vista? In that situation, another technology included in Windows Server 2008 can help. By using Terminal Services Remote App and TS Gateway, we can make our IIS Manager available outside the firewall over HTTPS, really to any operating system that has an RDP6 client installed. Furthermore, we can publish that application to the TS Web Access, which means there's no configuration on the client. In this case, the external user will need a user account in the Windows to log on to the TS Gateway, but once that is completed, they'll have full access to the IIS Manager application, and we can begin connecting to internal sites. Now let me show a demonstration how we're going to log on from my client and from there connect to the Terminal Service Gateway we're already configured. And for this, I'm actually going to flick into my Windows Vista client. I'm going to open the Terminal Services Gateway. So you can see this is a published application that was sitting on my remote terminal services or terminal server. I click on this. Ask me to connect, and then I can put my information in. In this case, I'm actually going to use a fully qualified user. I'm going to use Don Hall. This is the user we created before. And enter a password in. So this is actually now going out to my TS Gateway, launching that application, and allowing me to access that basically through anywhere in the world, on my local machine, at an internet kiosk, and within a hotel. So now that my remote app has actually started, I can look at the details. You can see that I have the remote ability. I have to retype my password to actually log on to the machine. And you can now see that I have full access to that information and to that theme. On the IIS information, you can see that I can then go through my connector site exactly the way we actually did before. So in this demo, you've seen the new capabilities of IIS 7, which lets you enable remote users to administer websites. These features represent an opportunity to reduce the overall complexity by eliminating the need in most cases for external users to have local access to websites and administer access to websites. You can limit them to only the website features you want them to manage without having to give them full domain accounts. And for users that don't have IIS 7 Manager, which is only available on Windows Server 2008, you can now provide them with remote access using the TS Gateway and TS Remote app. With that, I'll say thank you and enjoy your test drive experience.